The Trump administration begins purging the left-wing leftovers of the Obama administration and, of course, the deep state as well. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer today acknowledged the Trump administration is under attack by an orchestrated effort to subvert the president and his policies.
Well, I think that there's no question when you have 8 years of one party in office that there are people who continue to espouse the agenda of the previous administration.
We'll be talking about what needs to be done to quell sedition with the authors of the book, What Washington Gets Wrong, the unelected officials who actually run the government. Also here tonight, President Trump makes an all-out push for Ryan Care, saying the plan takes into account conservative priorities.
It provides states with flexibility over how Medicaid dollars are spent, giving power from Washington and back to local government, which we all want to see. They're going to do a much better job. And the plan empowers individual Americans to buy the health insurance that is right for them, not the plan forced on them by government.
We'll debate that with the Weekly Standard's Fred Barnes and former chairman of the Republican National Lawyers Association, Randy Evans. And rising tensions in East Asia. New satellite images showing North Korea may be preparing for another nuclear test. And Chinese state media issuing more warnings, warning the United States must pay the price for the deployment of the THAAD missile system in Korea. Are we nearing a breaking point? General Jack Keane is among our guests here tonight. Good evening, everybody. There's a furious battle over health care, and President Trump is predicting he will win passage of the legislation that conservatives are now criticizing as Ryan Care or Obamacare Light. President Trump today met with a group of House Republican committee chairs at the White House. He insisted Congress needs to act and act now.
We must act now to save Americans from the imploding Obamacare disaster. This is the time we're going to get it done. We're working together. We have some great results. We have tremendous spirit. And I think it's something that's just going to happen very shortly.
But House conservatives are demanding changes. Freedom Caucus members, Congressman Dave Bratt, Congressman Jim Jordan, among those considering urging leadership to blow up the Senate rules to completely remove Obamacare with one bill.
I'm for doing what needs to be done to make sure that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is completely repealed and replaced with something that is actually going to bring down costs for the families that I represent, and that we all campaigned on that simple message, that basic message, and that's what they sent us here to do.
The Congressional Budget Office is expected to weigh in with its estimates on costs and the impact of Ryan Care or Obamacare Light as soon as Monday. Joining me now to discuss the president's push for Ryan Care and whether House leadership is listening to their conservative colleagues, the executive editor for the Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor Fred Barnes. Fred, good to have you with us. This is starting to look like a potentially a real confrontation. The president seems assured that they have the votes, but the conservatives insist that Paul Ryan does not have the votes. Your thoughts?
Well, he has the votes as long as President Trump is behind him. You know, all the criticism of this particular repeal bill of Obamacare, repeal and replace, has been against Paul Ryan. And but all these conservatives are scared to death of Donald Trump, and he's behind it. So I think they'll be better off. And this notion that somehow you can just repeal all of Obamacare and just get rid of it in one swoop is crazy, because it will be filibustered in the Senate and you won't win. This is a narrower approach using the reconciliation process, and you have to meet all these rules in the Senate, and it is a less sweeping approach for sure, but it will get there eventually, and Obamacare will be gone.
Well, in the House, the reconciliation doesn't amount to much. The Senate can blow. Well, let me finish.
Okay.
The Senate can blow up, use the nuclear option, get to straight majorities. There is a peculiar attitude here, and one starts to believe that H Street and K Street and the Business Roundtable, Wall Street, that they have a direct easy pass to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and that what we're watching form here is something that is utterly misshapen, at least within the Trump vision of the future. This is a very dangerous moment, and that should not be underestimated, whether your name is Ryan or whether your name is Meadows.
Well, yeah, no, look, it's an important moment. There's no question about that. But look, are you going to get something passed or not that repeals Obamacare?
Well, wait a minute, Fred. This is let's remember who won that election in November. It's President Trump, the great disruptor, who's talking about draining the swamp. And what we've got. What are you going to do? It's, you've got the speaker saying it's binary. Are you kidding me? He's talking to children. I mean, he doesn't seem to have a grasp of the issues here, let alone the potential impact of the legislation that he's advocating.
Oh, I think he does. I think you're wrong about that. He wants to get through the House.
I don't doubt that he wants to get through the House. There's not a single cost estimate in front of us. There is no judgment about what will be the impact on premiums. There is no, I repeat, no foundation for the legislation whatsoever. Rush through Ways and Means, rush through Commerce and Energy. I mean, come on. This looks like a replay of 2009.
Well, then why
and
is
it does.
Why do you think Donald Trump is supporting it so vehemently?
Well, I don't know. Do you?
Yes, I do know why. And the reason.
But the issue to me is not who the hell is supporting this legislation, whether it's the president or whether it's Ryan. What will be the impact on the American people? This is supposed to be a populist moment in our history.
It is.
And the people should be at the forefront, and their impact and the cost and the result is critically important.
I agree with all of that.
Okay.
No question about it. But my question is, do you want to get a bill passed or not? I
don't want to get a bill passed. I want to improve the lives of American citizens.
Well, they go together. You get a bill passed.
Okay. Well, then we should just pass bills willy-nilly. It apparently doesn't matter what the economic impact is. It doesn't matter what the cost is. It doesn't matter whether it's a superior product to the one that preceded it. Come on. We just have to get a bill passed? Are you kidding me? We know that there aren't enough senators to pass this legislation. They don't like it. The margin isn't there.
That's why you need that's why you need to do it through the special process, reconciliation process. It's awkward, but you can do it.
Yes.
And block and Democrats can mount a filibuster in the Senate. Look, is this an ideal way to do it? No, it's not an ideal way, but at the moment, it's the only way, Lou.
It may be the only way, but it could be the most costly way, because if this blows up, this would be perhaps a significant blow to the Trump administration. And frankly, he is the only one down there right now who counts, because he is the man leading the country. And to watch Paul Ryan be absolutely capricious about the impact on the administration, I think is terrible. What do you think?
I think Paul Ryan is one of the least capricious people I've ever met. I've known him for 20 years. Look, he's crafted a plan along with the chairman of the two committees.
How long have you known Bill Kristol, for crying out loud? How long have you known Bill Kristol? I'm just curious.
About 20 years, too.
Yeah,
I've known him a long time.
I think you take my point. Fred, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being here. Good to see you.
Always enjoy it, Lou.
Me too. We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. Attorney General Sessions today asking for the resignations of 46 U.S. attorneys. They were appointed during the Obama administration. The Department of Justice says this is common practice during presidential transitions, and the Attorney General himself was forced to resign as Alabama Attorney General after President Clinton, as U.S. Attorney in Alabama after President Clinton took office. Joining me now to discuss the Trump administration's efforts to purge the deep state, the effort to repeal and replace Obamacare, RNC National Committee man, former chairman of the Republican Lawyers Association, Randy Evans. Randy, good to have you with us.
Lou, good to be here.
You got Dianne Feinstein howling about the firing of 46 U.S. attorneys. It's the night of the long knives. This has never happened in all of history, you would think, based on her rather political view and exclamations. What say you?
How quickly they forget. How quickly they forget President Obama basically eliminating and starting the process of creating this deep state, a deep state so deep that it insists on continuing even into the new administration. We've had the replacement of U.S. attorneys for every president who's come along, sometimes quite controversial, but it's nothing new. And I'm actually ecstatic that General Sessions took that step. I wish he had taken it a little sooner, but he couldn't because they held up his confirmation, probably so that they could hang around a little longer.
And the Justice Department assuring that professional staff and officials will be handling investigations and prosecutions throughout until the replacements for these 46 are in place. Given how slowly the process is going, both in terms of nomination and confirmation, that could be some time, couldn't it?
It could. I call it bureaucratic purgatory, which is literally, you don't have the old people, you don't have the new people, but you have the career people who were there, who've been there for 8 years, 10 years while President Obama was the president. They are deeply committed to their own agenda. They're deeply opposed to President Trump. They're going to fight him at every step of the way. And a good illustration of that was Sally Yates, who was even willing to supplant her authority for that of her boss, the President of the United States.
Right. And falling into the position of number 2 at the Department of Justice during the important executive order battle, which he refused to enforce. Let's go to the issue of trade. We're getting reports now that the White House, there is a division over trade, multilateralism, that is, instead of the president's preferred bilateral negotiation of a trade agreement, whether it be the renegotiation or the abandonment altogether of NAFTA, whatever it may be. There's a real fight between some of the establishment types within the administration and Peter Navarro, the economist, and Steve Bannon, who is the chief strategist for the president.
Lou, you put your finger on an inherent fracture that's inevitably going to come about with regard to the Republican Party in deciding who it is. Is it the people who put Donald Trump in as president, or is it the establishment? Free trade versus fair trade is going to be one of those issues. Inherently, the establishment has always been free trade, even if it cost America jobs, even if it drained our economy, even if it caused deficits, trade deficits, etc. And you have a president who says, enough already, enough of always being on the short end of the stick. Yeah. We need fair trade.
Randy,
and there's no reason it can't be both.
This is the essential issue. It's a defining issue for Donald Trump.
It is.
It is what made so many millions of Americans turn to him. Along with the rest of his agenda, certainly. But to abandon what he has campaigned on as trade, to let the Gary Cohns, the establishment types, their ilk, if you will, they represent the tired and the actually the defeated establishment intellectually. Globalism is in retreat everywhere. And this president, by the way, bears great credit for leading the charge and changing the direction of this country. I just don't even see how he could entertain the possibility of abandoning this great Make America First, Hire American, Buy American. Are you kidding me? This is a renaissance. We're at the eve of that renaissance, and it is a Trump renaissance so long as he follows through on these policies. Don't you agree?
No, Lou, I totally agree with you. Does anybody seriously believe we would have won the Brexit states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio, had there not been a fundamental shift to say enough of putting America equal with everybody, let's put America first for a change. Let's actually have trade deals that focus on protecting our economy, our jobs, and our people.
And we voted on that. We voted on that. And why then is there this fissure within the White House? And why is there the appearance, at least, that the president himself would be entertaining giving primacy to Gary Cohn or the National Economic Council over his own architects of his strategy that he carried to the American people. I mean, and he's been talking about this for years.
Well, unfortunately, a large part of the White House has been populated with the old establishment who still believes those ideas.
Well, whose fault is
even
that?
Though they
and
failed.
How do you get them out of there, Randy? Get to Washington, get that thing straightened out.
I think the president will do it for us. I think this president is going to say, you're either with me or you need to find a new job.
Well, I got to tell you. I'll just tell you this way. If the Gary Cohns of the world prevail in the Trump White House, it will be one of the sorriest days in American presidential history. Randy Evans?
And I'm going to say this to you.
Well,
they
you got to say it quick,
prevail. They will not prevail. Donald Trump will prevail, and his agenda will carry the day.
Oh, you know, you're not suggesting the establishment reporting on these issues is perhaps askew. Randy, good to see you.
You mean the same establishment that tried to...
I get the last word this time. Just this one night, Randy. Thanks for being with us.
Lou.
Randy Evans.
Thank you, Lou.
Great to have you here. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe the deep state and the left-wing national media fully intend to subvert the Trump presidency? It sure sounds like it, doesn't it? Oops, that was a little editorial. I apologize. Cast your vote on Twitter @LouDobbs. Follow me on Twitter @LouDobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram @LouDobbs tonight. A few thoughts now on the left-wing national media's war against President Trump and his administration. Before the election, Nate Silver of 538 was a media favorite, riding a streak of accurate calls on election outcomes. And then came Donald Trump, who destroyed many a maven and savant. On Election Day, Silver gave Mr. Trump a paltry 29% chance of winning the presidency. 29% on Election Day. And now, chastened, if not humbled, the oddsmaker has been taking a deep look within, as he should. His latest article, entitled, "There Really Was a Liberal Media Bubble." Yes, Nate, there certainly was. Silver just now waking up to the bias, writing, quote, "Political experts aren't a very diverse group and tend to place a lot of faith in the opinions of other experts and other members of the political establishment. Once a consensus is established, it tends to reinforce itself. Social media, especially Twitter, can amplify the groupthink further." Of course, that bubble also extended to 538's owner, ESPN. The CEO of ESPN's parent company, Bob Iger, who leads Disney, is also weighing a political run, we're told, as a Democrat in 2020. Slamming charges of political bias at the network is a complete fabrication. Yet ESPN's public editor tackled the topic of liberal bias at the network just 3 months ago and wrote, "There's a feeling among many staffers, both liberal and conservative, that the company's perceived move leftward has had a stifling effect on discourse inside the company." Note, leftward moves stifle discourse everywhere. Consumers have sensed that same leftward movement, alienating some. Actually, the word should be not some, but many. The sports network has lost about 12 million subscribers since 2011. 12 million. That's some. You'd think Disney would look at ESPN and see sports and money, their audience. Instead, they seem to see only another platform with which to publish their left-wing dribble. Think of it, left-wing nonsense from sports people. Good Lord. Apparently thinking their audience is far too stupid to notice the leftist agitprop that has been insinuated into ESPN and its talent and the sports it covers, but most prominently into those sports they cover that they once covered with insight and flair and without bias. Too bad. Our quotation of the evening, this one on audiences, and it is from, well, we thought appropriately, Nate Silver. Maybe the Disney honcho should listen to Silver, even if he screwed up his last election forecast, because this is what he said. Quote, "I prefer more to kind of show people different things than tell them, oh, here's what you should believe. And over time, you can build up rapport with your audience. Well, there you go. Not so hard, is it? Now the question is, does the management have the judgment to begin using that time wisely? We're coming right back. Stay with us. There's no doubt about it. The economy and the markets are soaring under President Trump.
We've seen more optimism in the CEO community in our first 50 days than we've seen in a long time.
We take up our booming Trump economy with media mogul Steve Forbes here next. The Trump economy, more good news for American workers, consumers, heck, everybody. The economy adding 235,000 jobs last month, unemployment dropping to 4.7%, the labor force participation rate rising to 63%. And why is all of this such good news? Because 340,000 more Americans joined the workforce as that unemployment rate declined. Wages also rising, also very important, up 2.8% from a year ago. Starbucks plan to hire 10,000 refugees is definitely hurting its brand, according to Credit Suisse, which reiterated a hold rating on Starbucks. Shares of the company down more than 2.5% since Starbucks announced the plan after President Trump's original extreme vetting order. It's Howard Schultz making a big mistake there. Joining us now to discuss the Trump economy, Forbes Media Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, Steve Forbes. Hallelujah. I mean, we're watching the market add $3 trillion. We're watching jobs being created. And by the way, this president can claim these jobs because he was working for 2 months before he took the oath of office. I mean, he's having an immense impact.
Well, the number that didn't get any attention today was what they call the household survey, which they do two ways: established companies and calling people and saying, "Are you working?" That is very volatile, month-by-month basis, but it has a better gauge of new business and job creation. That went up 447,000 after a long series of very disappointing results. If that continues in that way, that, as they say, is huge.
It is huge, and this is where we both have to acknowledge it is 1 month, but what a month it was, an extraordinary month. And what we're seeing in the markets guiding us toward that outcome 6 to 12 months out as well, we hope. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
This is where the tax issue becomes important.
What tax issue? We're supposed to be talking about, we're talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare. Don't you know that's the most important thing?
Well, they're going to get the tax thing done, whether McConnell likes it or not.
Well, I sure hope you're right, because all of a sudden we're having to watch Paul Ryan, who hasn't done a thing ever as a congressman, let alone as a speaker, tell us how it is that there's a binary choice in all of this. It's the closest you'll ever get to a conservative Obamacare program, whatever he said. And Mitch McConnell declaring that there will be no tax cut until summer at earliest. I mean, what the heck is going on?
I don't mind summer if they make it retroactive.
Well, I do.
If they make it retroactive to January 1st.
You know, that's great, Stephen. I understand why you're saying that. But we've got a president who's proactive. We don't need retroactive. What we need is to drive this thing forward.
I agree with you on the precedence of tax cuts.
This is the president who put these guys in the winner's circle, and now they're telling him how it's going to be? Are you kidding me?
Well, to show who's really boss, big good piece of news today on health care is not what's going on Capitol Hill. Trump announced the appointment of a new FDA head, a fellow named Scott Gottlieb, who is a true expert on speeding up approval of drugs, reforming that agency. And those are the kinds of things, they don't get big news, but that's going to fundamentally in the next 4 years make a big change, positive change for American medicine.
A report in the highly establishment Financial Times that a war is breaking out, pitting Peter Navarro, economist Peter Navarro, and the president's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, against Gary Cohn. That's right, Goldman Sachs, natural anti-establishment type. And Cohn is leading this idea that suddenly there's going to be multilateral trade agreements. Did he pay any attention to the president? Does he understand how he got this job and who put him there?
One of the things President Trump likes to do is keep people off balance, pit one against the other. But let's look what he's done. Trans-Pacific TPP, gone. Negotiations are going to begin to start on a trade agreement with Japan. One.
Merkel's
with
coming
India,
to town, too.
With Mexico. So the agenda is moving forward. And the key thing is, got to kick some butt on Capitol Hill, start a real health care reform, like vouchers instead of this stuff they're talking about, and get a tax cut.
You want that good Ryan border tax adjustment? Would you like that?
It's C minus,
okay.
and better than F.
Come on, at best it's a D minus. Come on, Steve.
There's a great year of great inflation, Lou. Come on.
Well, no, I'm getting tough again, Steve.
But it'll happen. He will make it happen, and they will realize if they don't succeed next year in the elections, the Republicans.
If they don't succeed, you just said they would, and now you're bringing this.
No.
To us.
Because they know if they don't, they're going to be looking for
the hypothetical is
opportunities.
explained.
Mitch McConnell,
the reassurance is accepted, as always, from the august Steve Forbes.
Mitch McConnell, if he doesn't do it right, will be here as a Fox contributor.
Oh, my. Steve Forbes, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Good to be with you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too.
The United States, working with local Syrian ground forces, now poised to begin the assault on the Islamic State stronghold of Raqqa. The White House today pressed on the decision to send some 400 of our Marines to Syria and the role General James Mattis is playing in that mission.
One of the things that the president has ensured is that the commanders have the flexibility to do what they need to fulfill the mission. The president is obviously, as commander-in-chief, made aware and signs off on all of those missions. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the generals to execute their mission to make sure that we continue to defeat ISIS and protect the nation.
And General Mattis, butting heads a bit with the Trump administration over his staff. Mattis wants the Pentagon's top civilian job to go to Ann Patterson. She's a one-time prominent supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, a group that President Trump may designate a terrorist organization. Joining me now to assess these latest moves by the president to defeat the Islamic State and provocations by North Korea, certainly joining us is Fox News military analyst General Jack Keane. General, great to have you with us. Let's start first with North Korea. It looks to be insistent upon provoking the West, certainly the United States, with the nuclear tests. More ballistic missiles have been launched. Your judgment?
Yeah, we're pretty much on a collision course now with North Korea, as they continue to develop their nuclear arsenal, attempting to miniaturize some of those weapons so that they can put it on an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the United States. We cannot tolerate that, Lou. And that's going to result in us either having to do a cyber attack to defeat them and or a kinetic air and cruise missile strike to defeat these launch facilities. That'll be a preemptive strike as required. And I think we've got to communicate this very clearly to the Chinese, that you are leaving us with no option but a military option, as you're permitting your client state to move towards a threatening situation to the American people. And that's the course we're currently on.
The specific policy reiterated again by the Pentagon. The response of the United States will be, as they put it, overwhelming if North Korea were to attack South Korea or any of our allies in the region.
Yeah, most definitely. If we conducted the preemptory strike, the North Koreans would likely do one of two things. One, conduct a rocket and artillery attack on Seoul, which would be devastating given the millions of people that live there. Or two, actually conduct an all-out invasion. Both of those things, nobody wants that. The Chinese do not want that. Certainly the South Koreans don't want that. And the North Koreans do not want to get involved in a land war in Korea again, because they will be defeated. They will lose their regime. But I come back to the original premise here. We are on a collision course with the North Koreans, and the only people that are going to get them off that course is China. And we've got to impress on China that we're dead serious. Our previous presidents have never been able to impact China. I'm thinking that this president will impact China for the first time.
And, well, that's encouraging. China, however, as you point out, has not been a partner, no matter how much they have tried to project themselves as that, to administration after administration. North Korea, meanwhile, rising to the level of a nuclear state with missile systems that are capable of delivery at least to 600 miles, and the suspicion is much greater. So what will happen here with China? The engagement, if it came to a conflict with North Korea, would certainly involve China, would it not?
Yes, I mean it would be devastating. What would eventually take place with a war of that scale in high population centers, and something nobody certainly wants. And I believe this administration is going to take a road with China that our previous administration did not. China has been trampling on U.S. interests and our allies for the last 8 years. They've been expanding militarily, as we have noted on the show many times. I believe this administration is going to push back on China's military expansion in the South China Sea, and also develop a different relationship with China, one where we're willing to engage with them, certainly economically, but we're also willing to confront them when they're trampling on our interests. And that's going to be different than what the Chinese are used to.
Very quickly, General, I want a question about personality, that of General James Mattis. He has come into conflict again, confrontation apparently with the White House on the issue of who will be the top civilian. As you know, Michel Flournoy, he wanted to be his defense deputy, rejected by the White House. Ann Patterson, now another prominent supporter of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood, the general putting her forward. And this is being met, it's a chilly reception on the part of the White House. It looks like, again, she will be rejected. What is going on between the general, the Muslim Brotherhood, and these names that he's advancing to be his top civilian deputy?
Well, I know Jim Mattis very well. Right. He's a good friend, and I think he's trying to do something in the Department of Defense that people have tried before, and that make it more bipartisan. But the reality is, having worked with 4 administrations, the one thing that they all have in common, Republican or Democrat, is they want their own political appointees in these positions in the Defense Department and in other cabinet levels to execute the agenda of the President of the United States. And believe me, they have a right to do that. And that's the reality here. And that's where we'll likely wind up. The President who will put people in the Department of Defense who will accomplish his agenda.
Absolutely. General Jack Keane, as always, great to see you. Thank you very much for your analysis, your insight. Thank you.
Good talking to you, Lou.
Up next, new calls to purge saboteurs from the Trump administration, the deep state. We'll talk next to the authors of the important book, What Washington Gets Wrong, and the unelected officials who actually run the government. They join me here next. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it. In our online poll, we ask you, do you believe Speaker Ryan is purposely dividing the GOP by pushing a bill that perpetuates budget-busting Medicaid extensions and insurance company subsidies described as refundable credit? 72% of you said yes, he is. My next guests have worked to expose the deep state. Joining us now, Jennifer Buckner. She is Director of Government Analytics at Johns Hopkins University. Benjamin Ginsberg, Professor of Political Science, Chair of the Johns Hopkins Center for Advanced Governmental Studies. They are the co-authors of this book. Authors of the book, What Washington Gets Wrong, the unelected officials who actually run the government, their misconceptions about the American people. Jennifer, Benjamin, thank you both for being here.
We're delighted to be here.
Let me just turn first to you, Jennifer. You've surveyed agencies, federal agencies, startling results. If we can put up the full screen so everybody can see this, 73% of government officials saying the public knows little about programs to help the poor. 71% of federal officials say the public knows little about science. 6 in 10 think the public know nothing about child care policy. These folks don't have a very high opinion of the rest of us, do they?
That's true in some respects. But, you know, I think one of our most interesting findings is that government officials often assume that their views on policy matters are far more different from the American people than they are in reality. And we call this phenomenon in the book false uniqueness. And we actually found that 75% of government officials think that they disagree with the average American on most issues, but really that number is only about 12%.
And these are the people who are running the government for the elected, the political officials who take over the government every 4 years or retain control of it. Benjamin, give us a sense of just how much this deep state preserves control. How powerful is their influence on our lives?
Well, look, the vision of government that we all take away from high school and college is false. The government is not run by the president, not run by Congress. The president and Congress sort of interfere superficially, but the government of the United States is, on a day-to-day basis, run by enormous bureaucracies surrounded by constellations of think tanks and lobbyists and consultants, and these folks march to their own agenda. One of the things we did in the book was compare the agendas, the regulatory and rulemaking agendas of bureaucratic agencies to public opinion, to Congress's agenda. What we discovered was the agencies march according to their own drummers. They will bow to the president, bow to Congress briefly, but generally speaking, when the agencies issue their thousands of rules and regulations every year, they do so on the basis of what they think should be done.
And this book that you two co-authored makes it very clear why we need to drain the swamp, folks, and I recommend it to you highly. There is these relationships, as you say, with the elected officials, but overall, the view of the bureaucracy, the permanent government, the deep state, is indeed, is it not closer to left-wing ideology than right-wing? Is that fair, Jennifer?
Well, we certainly find that there's a divide between the people who really run the government and the people. Right. And in the book, we offer several proposals that we think can help bridge this divide.
Yes, but I ask about the ideology of the permanent government. Surely that's important because we need to know who these people are if they're going to run our government in perpetuity without disruption.
That's fair. I mean, I think on average they're left of center, but I'm sure it varies by administration.
I thought you said that administrations don't make much difference in the deep state and the permanent bureaucracy. Benjamin, you get the last word here.
I would say that they tend to be more Democratic than Republican, but interestingly enough, they're all over the map. What's clear about them is that they like being in charge. They only talk to one another. They have contempt for ordinary Americans, and they have disdain for Congress and usually for the president as well. This isn't my vision of government by the people.
Benjamin Ginsburg, thanks so much for being with us. Jennifer Bogner, thank you. Both have agreed to come back and have a longer discussion about the deep state that they have encountered and written about in their important book, What Washington Gets Wrong. Thanks for being with us. Newt Gingrich, Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin join us Monday. We hope you will too. Have a great weekend. Good night. The Trump administration begins purging the left-wing leftovers of the Obama administration and, of course, the deep state as well. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer today acknowledged the Trump administration is under attack by an orchestrated effort to subvert the president and his policies.
Well, I think that there's no question when you have 8 years of one party in office that there are people who continue to espouse the agenda of the previous administration.
We'll be talking about what needs to be done to quell sedition with the authors of the book, What Washington Gets Wrong, the unelected officials who actually run the government. Also here tonight, President Trump makes an all-out push for Ryan Care, saying the plan takes into account conservative priorities.
It provides states with flexibility over how Medicaid dollars are spent, giving power from Washington and back to local government, which we all want to see. They're going to do a much better job. And the plan empowers individual Americans to buy the health insurance that is right for them, not the plan forced on them by government.
We'll debate that with the Weekly Standard's Fred Barnes and former chairman of the Republican National Lawyers Association, Randy Evans. And rising tensions in East Asia. New satellite images showing North Korea may be preparing for another nuclear test. And Chinese state media issuing more warnings, warning the United States must pay the price for the deployment of the THAAD missile system in Korea. Are we nearing a breaking point? General Jack Keane is among our guests here tonight. Good evening, everybody. There's a furious